Now I've got an interesting pattern for you today. I found it in the Federation of Fly Fishers Pattern Encyclopedia. It was tied by Gretchen Beatty and it was in the General Attractor Dry Fly section. The pattern is called the Poly Royal. Now I couldn't find any history on this specific pattern. It's just one more in the long line of variations spawned from the original Royal Coachman. And there are a few references to it out there. You might see it called a Polywing Royal Humpy or Royal Humpy with a poly wing, but either way it's kind of named just what it is. And I could see myself reaching for this if there's no obvious hatch going on and I'm just prospecting through some fast riffled water. And overall, it's not a hard tie, but it is a pretty cool looking pattern. So there it is in the vise, a Poly Royal as tied by Gretchen Beatty in the Federation of Fly Fishers Pattern Encyclopedia. Now it's an interesting pattern, kind of a mix between old school and modern materials. And the recipe said you could tie this from an 8 to a 22. Now I don't imagine I could tie this down to anything below an 18, so I'm going with a 10. Black thread, 70 denier. I'll lay a base down to the start of the bend. Now for the tail, just moose hair. Put it in my stacker. Maybe 8, 10 fibers or so. Let's see how that looks for us. I think that's going to be fine. Let's go about a body length, maybe even a little bit longer. Now don't go real tight right here. Even though moose is not as hollow as deer, it'll still flare on you if you're not careful. And I am going to leave that front end just to give me a little bit thicker of a body right there. Catch it off about a third of the way back. Now the body on this, or the hump, just some foam. And Gretchen used a tan, or a gray, and I'm going to use kind of a tan right here. It's sort of gray, but sort of brown as well. And this is one case where you don't tie it as, or cut it as thick as a hook gap. And I am going to catch it in up front, because I want to thicken up my underbody. That will give us a little bit more red showing. So just catch this in, to the back where the tail was. And I'm not going to squish these down too much, a little bit, just try to keep it uniform, but really I want a kind of thick underbody for my next component, which is a red floss. And I'm going to catch this in up front so that I can wrap it down and back, which will give me 2 layers. Because this type floss gets a little bit translucent when it gets wet. So just catch it in up front and then wrap it down and then back up. Okay, that's a little lumpy, but we're going to be fine. I don't want to catch it off where my thread is, so I'm going to take a couple wraps back and then catch it off back here. Now before I work on anything up front, I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. This is kind of reminiscent of a humpy. Might not be as thick or wide as a humpy, but it's not really a beetle either. Just a unique back to the fly right there, and I think that's going to be fine. So I'm going to cut this pretty short right here and just bury this little nub. Now we catch in our wing post, or wing. It's not a parachute, so it's not really considered a post. Just some white poly yarn, Parapost or Antron or Z-Line, anything kind of what you'd use for your indicators. So this is about 1.5 inch piece right here. I'm just going to fold it over, a couple wraps right there, and I am going to put a few wraps around it just to hold it together. Even though it's not a parachute, it will just, kind of give it a little bit nicer of a look, I think. Okay, that'll be fine. Now let's park our thread behind this post right in front of that foam and catch in a brown hackle. Now get this one sized to match the hook, maybe a hook gap or 1.5. And I'm going to catch it in back here and try to get 2 wraps behind the the post, and then 3, maybe 4 if I can get them up front. I might not have left myself enough room to get 4, but we'll see how much we can get. Because even though it is foam, that's not really going to add too much to the flotation. It's really going to be this hackle that keeps it floating. I mean, the foam will a little bit. It's certainly not going to hurt. But this hackle right here is what's going to do it. So I think that was 1.5. Let's try one more right here, and then get, several in front of it if we can. Well, that is 3, and I'm starting to crowd my eye. I don't think I can get too much more. We're going to have to live with 3 up front. And before I snip that off, I'm going to go ahead and just pull everything back and make a little room for a whip finish. And I have trapped a couple fibers going forward. I'll have to trim those in just a second. We'll trim them short here and then maybe singe them if we need to at the end, but let's go ahead and get rid of this excess. And this post, you want it to be, according to the picture, just really to the top of this hackle. So let's bunch them up, pull it tight, and then try to get a clean cut. There we go. So that's it, a Poly Royal. Pretty cool little pattern and not really hard to tie. So I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.